Welcome to Under the Lens. Come and enjoy an extraordinary, raw, and unfiltered podcast that delivers debate, discussions, and interviews about film, pop culture, and everything in between. Here is your host, film critic and journalist, Byron Lafayette.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to Under the Lens. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus for a while, in case you hadn't noticed, but we are back now, and Merry Christmas to everybody as well, since we are in the month of December. And we're going to have kind of a fun, low-key episode for this return, where we're going to be talking about the upcoming possible release of James Gunn's Superman trailer and kind of like what we're expecting from it, what we think it needs to show, and just some overall thoughts about the DCEU, or the DCU, I should say, as a whole, and just kind of, any worries we have, any excitements we have, stuff like that. So it's going to be a fun conversation. And joining me for this is going to be my buddy, Josh Mesker. So thanks, Josh, for joining me today.
Yeah, happy to do it. This should be interesting, especially since we're both big Snyder fans, but I'm just as much of a Gunn fan as I am a Snyder fan, and you are not. And so I actually think that that's going to provide just some interesting discussion, both in similarities and in differences. So I'm ready to go.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be very interesting because yeah, I mean, it is honestly like, with you, Josh, there's not a lot of people who are huge fans of both Snyder and Gunn, because I mean, they're different styles, they're different types of directors. And yeah, definitely, I think probably listeners of the podcast do know that I'm not the biggest Gunn fan. That being said, I wouldn't consider myself a Gunn hater either, because I actually have enjoyed some of his work that he's done.
I mean, his talent is at least obvious, even if you don't like his style.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit, but yeah, I absolutely cannot say that the guy's not talented. And in some ways, I would almost say, I think he is as good of a visual director as Snyder, but in a different way. It's, they're completely on two opposite spectrums, but they both are visual directors in very good ways. So, Superman is, swiftly coming. As of right now, it's scheduled to release in, I think it's mid-July of 2025. And up against some heavyweight competition currently right now with Fantastic Four and Jurassic World 4. But no sign currently of it moving or any of the other ones moving. So it might just be a slugfest with those ones. But a lot of people have been wondering where the trailer is for this film, or like a poster. They really haven't released a lot of official, media, I guess you could say, for the movie. But there have been a lot of rumors lately that this trailer might be dropping, or some type of trailer or teaser might be dropping this December. But were you surprised, Josh, that he didn't drop a trailer during one of the bigger movie releases this fall that we've seen?
Yeah, I was. I think that if they were going to try to make a splash and kind of build hype before the new year, that some type of short teaser that just got people excited would have made sense, because then after that, we're heading into the new year, and there are great movies obviously releasing first half of 2025, but kind of action adventure comic book movie season doesn't really kick off until the summer. And so, usually speaking, there'll be some kind of interspersed here and there. And so kind of the window to do that is closing quite rapidly, since there's only 2 weeks left in the year. And kind of the last chance really was to release it with the new Lord of the Rings animated film, which is also WB. So that would have been the last best option, would be to do it in conjunction with the new Lord of the Rings movie, and in my opinion would have made sense to do it. But it seems to me that he is not going to do that and has another plan up his sleeve, because as we were talking about earlier, it's not like the teaser is going to be released for Nosferatu or something. So that would be a mismatch in marketing, big time. And so, we're both marketing guys, so we get that. And so the question is, if there's going to be a teaser in the next couple of weeks, how's that going to be rolled out?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, just kind of I was looking ahead a little bit here, to January 2025. And as you said, there's a lot of great movies coming out. I mean, we have, Den of Thieves 2, we have Wolfman, we have Flight Risk, there's a couple of other ones, great movies, but like you said, not particularly movies that you would put Superman, in front of, so it is, I'm curious, definitely, because, even looking ahead a bit, to February, I feel like, the only movie really that may make sense to put in front of that would be Captain America: Brave New World, which is, I think we kind of don't know exactly how that's going to perform, but I have a feeling it's probably going to open decent. Like, I don't think it's going to flop or anything like that.
No, I actually think we'll see a significant rebound for the MCU just because of how they marketed that movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the marketing, regardless of how the movie is, the way they've marketed it has been shockingly near perfect. And which is saying a lot for the current state of the MCU. And so that would be some interesting counter programming to run a DC movie trailer during Captain America's run.
Mm-hmm.
It very much would be an interesting play.
Mm-hmm.
To do that.
It definitely would be. And like you said, kind of like being, that bit of a rivalry. It's like, I wonder if that would even happen just because of that. But, it is, because I agree. Like, the marketing for Brave New World has been outstanding. Like, I can't think of really a single poster that's been bad, that I've thought. The trailers have all been, like,
really good,
yeah. I mean, I've been very critical of the MCU for a long time, but like, I have gotten vibes of like Winter Soldier, Civil War from it. And, so, and I mean, I'm not necessarily throwing anything out there, but this might be an MCU movie that I see in theaters, and I can't remember the last MCU movie I saw in theaters, so this actually might bring me back for an MCU film, possibly.
I mean, you can't remember the last movie you saw in theaters.
Yeah.
It's a running joke, everybody, that we have that some of us have with Byron. So.
It is true. I have not been to a theater in a very, very long time. And, I keep teasing, I'm going to come back. There's going to be the movie. And you know what? Right now, I'm going to blame Warner Brothers. I think it's appropriate because, I was all set to come back for Horizon Chapter 1, and it was in theaters for about 5 minutes. And I was
right.
And I remember I was like, oh, I think I'm maybe going to go see it this weekend. I looked, I was like, it's not in theaters anymore. So I'm just going to conveniently blame Warner Brothers for that.
Yeah, but, well, that's fine, because I, whether justified or not, blaming WB is never a problem with it.
It is never a problem,
No, just use them as the scapegoat as often as you want. Yeah. It will not offend me.
No, it's what I always say, WB, if they can make a mistake somehow with marketing, with a film, with anything, they will go out of their way to make that mistake.
Right.
And I think coming back around to the DCU with Gunn, I think that it'll be interesting because because I truly am curious at how much creative control WB has, because I know that Gunn has said, like, I'm making all the decisions, all that, but I feel like the WB and Zaslav have to have some type of control with their marquee, IP, because you look at, like, with WB, I mean, what is their top IPs? Lord of the Rings, DC. I'm trying to think, like, I guess Dune would be
Dune
one now,
Dune's definitely up there now. And then, and then of course the Harry Potter franchise, which will be making a resurgence. So, and some others too that I'm sure we're forgetting. But.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, they have a lot of IPs, but it's like, I mean, DC is the one they keep going back to the well, so to speak, of trying to make it work. And and I'd like to think that they've learned from their mistakes, with Snyder and with the DCEU, of letting, creatives kind of take the reins a little bit, with, at least as far as story goes. But I think we've also talked about this with Snyder, is that sometimes you do need to have a little bit of corporate oversight with creatives, but not so much that it's stifling creativity, which is like kind of a weird paradox.
I agree. And I also think, though, that with Gunn, he probably has a lot, if not a majority, creative control because of his pedigree. They brought him in coming off of 3 extremely successful Guardians of the Galaxy movies, for the MCU. Somebody who knows and loves comic books, who has spent most of his career making comic book movies, and they wanted somebody in with a strong vision, so they didn't feel like they had to babysit. As the point, but they tried to babysit Snyder way too much. And that's the that's the irony there. But regardless, they saw Gunn as a way to bring in somebody with just as much of a pedigree as Snyder, who may be a bit more so-called mainstream in their approach. And that's exactly why they did it.
No, absolutely. And and that's the thing, is that I feel like, and I guess this we can kind of lean into our discussion a little bit on the DCU right now, that that I feel like, because as I've said, I've been critical of Gunn, with some stuff, before. I will say I very much enjoyed the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Still one of my favorite MCU films.
It is mine. It still is mine.
Yeah, I feel like it's probably, like, I really need to come up with a list, of my MCU films, of the top ones. But I would say it's 100% in my top 5. I can't really say right now what my number 1 would be without, like, looking over it. But it's definitely top 5. Just I loved it when I saw it in theaters. And it was just very, very good. I enjoyed the second one. I didn't like it as much, there were some problems I had with it, but Kurt Russell was great. He was a great villain in it, I have not seen the third one yet, actually. I'm like behind on some of my MCU films.
It's great. And heart-wrenching and funny and action-packed, and really does a good job wrapping up that particular Guardian team and their story. And it was really very good, and so, I mean, out of the 3, Volume 2 is the weakest one, even though it's still good, but Volume 3 brings it back up closer to the level of the first movie in that trilogy. So
that's great to hear, because like I've been behind on a lot of MCU movies over the last couple of phases where I've missed a few.
Well,
and I've been I've been debating whether or not, like, to just go and, like, kind of watch them, or I've also been kind of thinking about doing, like, an MCU watch through just over the course of I don't know, a year or 2 or whatever, just kind of watching a few here and there, but I'm not 100% sure which way I'm going to go yet.
Yeah, I finally got to a point with the MCU for me where I divorced myself from the idea that I had to see every last one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And my approach is truly just I pick and choose.
Yeah.
And it's gonna take a lot for me to like recommit to just every single one
Mm-hmm.
that that comes out. I'll eventually see them,
Mm-hmm.
on Disney Plus or
Yeah.
something like that. But I haven't felt an urgent need to go see an MCU film in a very long time.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
the
I
last one I
agree.
saw in theaters was Guardians 3. And
Mhm.
that was cathartic enough for me that I was like, well, that's kind of like if this is the direction that the MCU is going, lower quality, rush story, and so forth, Guardians 3 basically wrapped up the MCU for me,
Mhm.
and because the Avengers story was already wrapped up, but the Guardians story wasn't. And so now it is, at least that particular team's story. And so it was very definitive for me.
Mhm.
And but I'll look at what the reviews are and what some of our friends say about Captain America, and then maybe me and my son will go,
Mhm.
we'll go see it in in the theaters. And because if it starts getting really good buzz, that's the thing where I'm not going to be able to resist it, at that point. But it's been very easy to resist most Marvel movies as of late, and most Marvel TV shows. So.
No, absolutely the same with me. It's like, I feel like I'm trying to think here, like, um, I saw most of Phase 4. I want to say, I think I saw Black Widow, I saw Shang-Chi, Eternals, No Way Home, and those are the only ones of Phase 4. I haven't seen Doctor Strange 2, Thor 4, or Black Panther 2.
No, Thor 4 is awful.
Yeah.
It's really, really bad.
Mhm.
And I'm out of all the guys that we talk about movies with, I'm pretty forgiving about movies.
Mhm.
And so um for the listeners, there's kind of as a result of all that, there's kind of this thing that's come about called like the Josh rule. And it's like if Josh hates it, it must be really awful.
Uh-huh.
Because if I can't find something redeeming, that is a huge red flag. Huge red flag. If I can't,
Uh-huh.
and it was just so bad.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's like I've heard it so much, like I almost want to see it just for the train wreck, because
Well, you should.
it's like,
You should.
it's like, oh.
You should. And Christian Bale is really, really good in it. He
Mhm.
just deserved more screen time, and you'll see when you see it.
Oh.
But that brings us to the fact that like the MCU, kind of that era of the MCU closed out, and WB goes, hey, let's get James Gunn over here to
Mhm.
revive DC movies.
Mhm.
And Superman's the first one on the slate, which makes sense because when DC movies were initially revived a handful of years ago, obviously the first one to lead the way was a Superman movie.
Mhm.
And that just makes sense because he's the mascot of DC right next to Batman.
Mhm.
And so it will be interesting to see if there is a teaser, what he chooses to show, what kind of vibe he puts forth, what he wants to communicate to viewers and fans about what the new slate of DC movies will look like, especially as it comes to Superman, because people have you talk to 10 different fans of Superman and you'll get 10 different answers on who they think Superman is or how Superman should be handled. It's the most divisive character in that sense in DC, because because there's so much nostalgia and wrapped up in that character that that people have very set ideas, I think, about how they think Superman should be handled. And so, it's one of those things where while I loved Man of Steel, I loved BVS, I loved Zack Snyder's Justice League and so forth, I thought that portrayal of Superman was excellent. Obviously thought Cavill was great. I didn't have any problems with it. A lot of people did. A lot of people did. And so whether we like it or not, Gunn is in to try to balance the scales.
Mm-hmm. It's very true because I will always confess that I've never been a huge fan of the character of Superman, in the sense I didn't grow up reading Superman comics. I watched some of the old Superman cartoons growing up and everything.
I was always more of a Batman guy.
It's same, yeah. I was a huge Batman fan. I watched all of the Batman material, films and TV shows and the animated. I grew up watching the animated, so it's so when Man of Steel came out, I loved Man of Steel because I loved this kind of darker, edgier, more action-packed version of the character. But like you said, a lot of people didn't like it, and I think it's kind of interesting because you see, we have, Superman Returns, which came out, I think, was it 2006 or 7, somewhere around there. Yeah, it was I want to say the take on it was reasonably well accepted. I mean, for the most part, you don't hear a huge.
It was a spiritual successor to. I mean, it was the same universe timeline as the Christopher Reeves Superman, essentially. At least a spiritual successor to that.
No, absolutely, and I know a lot of people have complained. I actually haven't seen Superman Returns. It's been on my list to see for a while. Because I like the actor's name is escaping me, but I like the lead.
Brandon Routh.
Yeah, I really like him a lot, and I really enjoyed him when he reprised his Superman role for the CW Crisis on Infinite Earths. He was great, and I was kind of made me want to go back and see his original turn. But it's kind of interesting because you see, that you have these different split camps, basically. If you have these people who like the darker Superman, who's more action packed, you have the more nostalgic fans who like the more less action, more touchy feely Superman, a Reeve a little bit. And so it kind of what do you think? I guess the conversation we can have is what does Gunn need to bring to bear with this film? Because obviously he's aiming for a crowd pleaser. They're spending, rumor has it, somewhere around 200 to 250 million on this film. So it's so they're looking to make money. They're obviously not looking to make a niche movie. They want a 4-quadrant. Everybody's happy with it. So it's do you think with this movie, does it need to be action packed? Does it need to be more character focused? What are you looking for, I guess, as a fan?
Well, I mean, it needs to be all the above, ideally, and that's not a cop-out answer as much as, when you're bringing Superman back, people are going to want it to be an action-packed story. People want to see Superman use his powers, and be put in a little bit of danger, which is obviously tough for Superman sometimes because he's nearly indestructible. But just as a quick side note, that's precisely why Zack Snyder gave Superman so much internal conflict to deal with. Is because he knew that he was dealing with a character that is virtually unkillable, with very few exceptions. And
I mean, BVS, they blow a nuke up in his face,
right, and he still comes back. He turns into the Crypt Keeper, and then he still comes back, and gets all shrivelly and everything. But Snyder, in my opinion, was smart in that he goes, okay, how do we honor Superman and Superman's legacy, but give the character enough of a modern take and also make sure that he has personal and emotional vulnerabilities, more so than maybe what some have seen in a lot of other Superman movies. And I'm not saying they're not there, so those of you who may take offense to that, understand, I'm not saying that they weren't there in previous Superman movies to an extent, but Snyder very clearly wanted to dig deeper, and he wanted Clark to deal significantly with his place in the world as an alien from another planet, and how he actually fits into that landscape. And so for me, honestly, we still need, in my opinion, I'm still looking for a emotionally resonant and personal Superman story. I am. I won't be satisfied with a super light and airy Superman story. Because you can just go watch any other of the earlier Superman movies, for that. And so I'm definitely looking for that still, even with the change in tone. I'm still looking for a personal, emotionally resonant Superman story on the big screen. And the reason why I think that Gunn was a good choice is because he knows how to do those kinds of stories. He's done them multiple times. He takes great care with his characters. He gives them all personality and motivation. And James Gunn, for all the criticisms that some may want to throw at him, is not he walks that thin line between being a mainstream comic book movie director while also breathing a lot of life into his characters and really being able to give them emotional weight and significance. And so I think Gunn's going to deliver on that. We'll see. Every filmmaker, even good ones, they all have their flops. They all do. But I think that Gunn, I personally think we have every reason to believe that Gunn's going to deliver an emotionally resonant Superman story, even with the change of tone, an action-packed Superman story, and also be able to do the world building necessary, because Gunn is a good world builder, to set the DCU in proper motion. And so I'm still pretty high on it. We'll see what happens when I sit in the seat and and watch the movie. And I also do think, though, that people need to temper their expectations, because for whatever reason, despite Superman's rabid fan base, Superman movies historically, with the exception of the really old ones, they're not these massive box office hits. Even Man of Steel wasn't considered this massive hit. It made good money, but it wasn't considered just this box office blowout type of hit. And then, of course, Superman Returns flopped, and so we will see what happens in this case. But that's what I'm looking for too. And you know what? I will have no issue with a little bit of humor. And I know that that some are worried that Gunn, given how quirky his humor style is and so forth, that they're just going to completely go off the rails with Superman. I personally, and I'll eat I'll eat my shoe later with some ketchup if I'm wrong. I think that Gunn understands the mandate here, and he of all people doesn't want the first movie out of the gate with him in charge to end up being this super campy, unserious, jokey joke filled Superman movie. That's just not in his best interest to do that. And so the balancing act there that I've discussed over the past couple minutes is where the discussion is how can Gunn balance all of that together into a strong Superman movie, both with expectations, audience, and studio, and also with his own style and creative vision and way of doing things like no other comic book movie director does. Which, as a side note, it's why he's up there for me, like Zack Snyder is, because nobody in this genre, which is flailing mightily as we speak, nobody, in my opinion, other than James Gunn and Zack Snyder, can pull it off quite like they can. Their own vision.
No, yeah, I would agree with you on that, because James Gunn definitely has a strong vision in his films. His movies all have a feel to, what do they call the art? Yeah, he's like the auteur blockbuster director. There's very few of those that you see. Snyder is one of them. I think James Gunn is one of them.
He definitely is.
I honestly, off the top of my head, can't really think of another one who is to that extent, where like you put a movie in front of somebody, who generally knows films, you say, who's this director? And they're probably going to be able to say, that's a Snyder film, that's a Gunn film. And
the others in this heavily congested genre, they're a lot less descriptive as far as that concerns, unless you're talking about, Joss Whedon's Avengers movies, which of course he's not making movies anymore. And then, the Russo brothers and their Avengers movies, they certainly ended up bringing a distinct, refined style, to the Avengers films. And of course, Civil War and Winter Soldier. But again, that is those guys are few far between, and 95% of the genre is full of competent directors who have no real personal stamp.
Oh yeah, so much. You see that with so many of the superhero films coming out, from all different, Marvel, DC, Sony, everything, that there's no shortage of CBMs coming out, but unfortunately, as of late, the quality has been fairly poor, across the board. Even with a lot of the final DCEU films that came out had like some quality issues, that I'm sure we'll get to in the DCEU and Me podcast.
Oh, we will.
It's like,
But like, how about for you though, as somebody who's more of a Gunn skeptic, what you're looking for in both a potential teaser as far as like the vibe is concerned, but then of course the actual movie, just with you being more of a Gunn skeptic.
Yeah, because I always say, when it comes to a film or a director that I'm skeptical about, like a good trailer can win me over. I've always said that. Like I'm willing to be won over, by something. And the funny thing is that kind of, some of my apprehension when it comes to, like Superman, the 2025 is, kind of getting over, my bitterness at WB. Because the funny thing was that I always
Well,
say,
I'm so mad.
oh yeah, because it's like the funny thing is that when the Snyder cut came out, it was like 2021, I think, I had pretty much resolved to myself that Henry Cavill had moved on, that we weren't getting another Superman movie. We were, that it was, the door had been closed. I was very happy though to get the Snyder cut. Then when they did this big announcement of him, he was in Black Adam, they were like, Man of Steel 2 is in pre-production, all this stuff. And then the rug got yanked out. I was like, oh my gosh, I was so mad. And it's taken me a while to warm up to the idea of like a new interpretation of Superman after that. Now, that being said, I am a bit of a Gunn skeptic, and I am nervous, about the film, with him, just because some of his humor sensibilities aren't exactly my style. A little bit of his visual style, sometimes with kind of the extreme stylization, I guess you could say, is not always my thing. Kind of, it's not a deal breaker for me with films, but just some of the style choices are not, my favorite. But what I think I'm looking for, first in the film, I guess, is exactly what you said, that I want a heartfelt story. I want Superman to feel like a real character. I wanted to feel like a real person, because that's what I liked so much about, Cavill, was that I was like, oh, I see, like a human, there, like you said, of his struggles, his love, his loss, his conflict with that was just kind of resonated and made that character seem alive. And so I want to see something like that with Gunn. Now, it doesn't have to be the exact same. It doesn't have to obviously be the same conflicts, but something that kind of shows him struggling a little bit, as a person, as an alien, as a human. I'm looking for. I'm looking for some great action sequences, and I think Gunn will deliver on that, because I've never had a problem with Gunn's action.
His action sequences are unhinged. They're ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm not necessarily worried about that, but I do want to see some good action in there. I definitely do want to see, his humor and the humor toned down for the movie. Like you said, I don't mind humor existing, in a comic book film, and I don't mind even humor in the Superman movie, but I hope it's not like a quip fest or something like that. I'd like to see a little bit more of a like I said, I'm not expecting a dark movie, because I know that's not exactly, that's not happening, but something is a little bit more serious, because I feel like Warner Brothers is going for a little bit more light feel to the universe. And so I guess with the trailer, what I'm looking for is something that kind of just assures me to those things. Like I would like to see some good visuals. I'd like to maybe see a hints of a couple of action sequences in there, maybe. And also, I really want a good look at the suit, because the behind the scenes images I have not been impressed with, and so I want to see
those leaks have not done the movie any favors.
No, and I realize behind the scenes suits, they do get changed in post-production, and I know a lot of people, myself included, pointed to how good Cavill's suit looked, and I think that has kind of hurt some bad press there. But like I said, I think that kind of stuff can be fixed in post, and so I hope we get a great looking suit, a little bit of action, maybe a couple of heartfelt moments in the trailers, what I would like to see.
Yeah. Ultimately, ironically, we're kind of on the same page when it comes to that. But and it bums me out that some preconceived, maybe not preconceived notions, but what I feel are some incorrect assumptions about the Zack Snyder, Henry Cavill Superman, like that version of Superman as a character was inherently dark and whiny and all that. And I couldn't disagree with that more. But there was even subtle humor in Man of Steel and so forth. It was just significantly toned down. And so, they to make the crowd pleaser that they want to make, though, given a lot of those opinions that are out there, they've just got to find the sweet spot as far as tone is concerned. And as long as they do that, a very wide net will be cast.
Oh, exactly. I mean, because we just, we look at like Matt Reeves, the Batman, that movie was true to, to who Batman was as a character. He gave us kind of that dark, grimy detective, feel, to it. And like you said, cast a wide net. It's why the movie made 800 million, was because, he made a good movie. And that was kind of an example, I think, also for myself of being won over, that I was not on board for that movie when it was announced. Like, I was like,
well, it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking.
Oh, yeah. It absolutely was. And like, just, it was, and then even more like, just some of the stuff that came out during the lawsuit of, I can't remember the guy's name, the guy who claimed that some of his ideas got infringed upon. And so he took Warner Brothers to court, over it. And that actually, and there was a lot of interesting things that came out because I believe, I think Matt Reeves had to testify, I think, a little bit to some of the decisions that were made and everything. And there was just some like just wild stuff that came out about like Warner Brothers itself and how, that it kind of confirmed some of the rumors that Warner Brothers fired Ben Affleck basically, in favor of Reeves' movie. And, a lot of people blamed Reeves for that. It wasn't Reeves' fault that they decided to go with what he wanted instead. But like at the same time, I was mad. I was irritated that we didn't get the Affleck movie. And so I wasn't in favor of Patterson's film, even though I like him as an actor. Well, it hit HBO Max, and I watched it. I liked the movie. I thought it was good. I have some problems with it. I still do. But overall, I was like, okay, this was a good, well-crafted movie. And I'm excited for part two. I think part two will probably be even better than the first one. So, I'm hoping something like that happens to me with Gunn's Superman, that I hope that, once I see the trailer and all that it will win me over.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because if it doesn't win you over, there's a lot of other people it's not going to win over either, and then you've got guys like me who are pretty strong Gunn defenders, who are still looking for kind of the right tonal balance and everything, that you could lose us too, and so there's a lot riding on this. I just hope that, and heck, it could end up making 800 million, $1 billion, who knows? I mean, but very possible. But I do hope that they've tempered their expectations for the first movie in a reboot, because and especially given the up and down history of Superman movies in the theaters, that they shouldn't expect $1 billion.
Oh, I completely agree that the expectations need to be tempered, because, I always use it as an example that I was like, okay, Man of Steel was the first, was the most profitable Superman movie since Superman 2. I think that was 1980, I think. Yep. And it's like, you look at Man of Steel, that it had a very huge cast of A-listers in it, a lot of like really big names. I mean, you have Russell Crowe, Kevin Costner,
Amy Adams. Yeah,
Amy Adams. It was huge cast, like very, very well known. And that movie still only made like, what was it, like 700 million, 680 million, somewhere around there.
Just shy of 700, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was also coming off of Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, and they heavily promoted this as Nolan's, as Nolan being part of this, so I think when you look at all of that combined, he was very involved in it, so you look at all of that, which came about to, just shy of 700 million. And then we look at now, okay, we have a bit of a split fan base, you have, superhero films on the decline right now, and they could come back, I think, with some good quality and everything it could, but right now it's in a slump, that we're seeing. Superman 2025 really doesn't have, a lot of A-listers in it. It has a smaller cast. There's a few well-known names in there, but overall doesn't have the star power, I guess you could say, that like Man of Steel had at the time.
Keeps
and
the budget lower.
It does keep the budget lower, which is, I think, what the plan was. And I think that's smart. And also too, you have this being, like you said, a hard reboot that is coming, off the heels of the last Superman actor last being seen on screen like 2 years ago, which is not that long. So there's a lot of things kind of that are going against it. And so I hope, like you said, that they need to temper their expectations that, that this movie might not be a $700-800 million movie. It could be, like you said, it could be a fantastic film that explodes and is massive, highest grossing Superman ever, or it could be where, maybe it's like at 550 or something like that. Like it could go either way, honestly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And without a doubt. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but that's the risk you run when you do a hard reboot. And but there's enough planned and enough announced for the DCU that as much as it's been hard for me because, as I said, I love Snyder and Gunn equally, but for different reasons. They're kind of like the yin and yang of comic book movies, in my opinion. And I think that's why they intrigue me so much.
Mm-hmm.
And but I want the DC, despite my feelings about how the Snyder era was completely mismanaged by WB, and really intentionally left out to dry in many ways, which is even more aggravating. I want the DCU under Gunn to be successful. I mean, DC characters, I've always been more of a DC guy than Marvel.
Same here.
And I love the DC slate of heroes and villains. And so I want it to be super successful, because I want a stable DC movie universe, where these stories can be told and we can see these characters again, whether they're, it's Batman again or Green Lantern or and even some of the other characters that they're going to lean more into horror with Swamp Thing and Clayface, that is, there's just so much potential there and opportunity. And I hope that that is seized and that the DCU is successful and the Superman movie is successful enough that, that they can continue that trajectory. So
absolutely, and, because I know a lot of people had problems with the Arrowverse, on CW and everything. And even I did, being a fan, there was a lot that was very problematic in that universe. But at the same time, like, as a DC fan, I loved seeing, all those characters, together, crossing over constantly, popping up here and there, seeing all these, obscure villains, heroes, seeing them all come together for Crisis. Like I said, despite its problems, seeing that vibrant universe, being alive was cool, and so I can definitely, agree with you that, that we all want to see, I think, a DC universe that's vibrant on the big screen. And, I do wish that Warner Brothers would have done more to bridge the gap between the fan bases, like the Snyder fan base, to kind of close the book on it, because I feel like just the way they did it was, like, I can understand, okay, they want to do a hard reboot, they want to start over again, whatever. I always thought, Snyder had always said that, like a graphic novel or even a novel, he would be willing to do. And I see like what was it, Batman Resurrection, that just came out about Keaton's Batman. And I'm like, a great way to just kind of close out the Snyderverse, hire Snyder to do Justice League Part 2 and 3 as a pair of novels, just have him turn his script into novels and release those and say, hey, here's the end of the Snyderverse, and just do that. Like, I wish they would have done a little bit more.
I mean, they'd sell like crazy.
Oh yeah, they'd be New York Times bestsellers, and it'd be a way to thank your old fans while closing out the old universe, and hey, you might even have another revenue stream of books. You could do a whole series of those, if you wanted to, and so it's kind of sad, when I see that, but I guess like kind of the last point that I think would be a little interesting to talk about and get your thoughts and mine is, what do you think of the slate, that has been announced so far, of like kind of the direction Gunn is going, the films that he's going to do, and do you have any concerns of like what has been announced, or do you have any concerns for the DCU as it is right now, I guess you could say?
Well, first of all, I'm glad that he's kind of mixing it up between live action and animated.
Mm-hmm.
That will all be considered canon. Because doing it that way opens up, especially the medium of animation,
Mm-hmm.
to run right alongside the live action counterparts. And I think that that's a really smart idea, and it's exactly what he's doing with Creature Commandos. It's fully canon, in the universe, but it just so happens to be animated. And I think that that's good because, that'll draw a different set of fans into who prefer animation over live action, or at the very least really love both. And so you've got the TV offerings, and you've got Andy Muschietti working on the next Batman movie, which I'm glad he's going to have more time and likely be less stressed than he was with The Flash, because The Flash was solid. I'll always defend it on its merits. I don't think it's a bad movie, but it certainly didn't close the deal. Like, it certainly didn't close the deal on the Snyderverse like it could have.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
If you're not going to get a Justice League 2 and 3, there was an opportunity for the Flash to do just enough that it could just chill everybody out.
Mm-hmm. I always said that, like, that they should have moved the Flash from its summer release and moved it to early 2024, like maybe March or something. It would have separated the Ezra Miller scandal, given a little bit of time. And, like you said, I think that they could have even filmed a couple of extra scenes maybe at the end or something, with a few characters, and they could have, put a bow, on the DCEU in a decent way, especially if it was the last film.
And there were, we've read enough about what one of the finales of Flash was going to be, too, with Superman and Wonder Woman and Batman there at the end, and they 86'd that. And that was not a good idea. I
agree.
That was a really, really bad idea. And so, but yeah, I'm intrigued by the story idea that they've picked for the next Batman movie. I like that Robin's going to be coming back.
Finally,
we haven't seen a Robin since Batman and Robin, and so that really intrigues me. I'm sure it won't be long before we see other members of the Bat family prominently displayed, like Nightwing and Batgirl and so on and so forth. And so I'm really stoked about what I think and what I hope is going to be a lot more of the Bat family being utilized, going forward. I think that that's a really great idea. And so you've got the Batman movie, you've obviously got Superman coming up, and then you've got James Mangold doing a more horror centric Swamp Thing, a movie. You've got Mike Flanagan, who's needs no introduction to horror fans, working on the Clayface movie. And so, and there are other movies in the slate we could talk about, but I just wanted to mention kind of the contrast there between, your Superman and your Batman movies, and then, your Swamp Things and your Clayface movies. I think that while Gunn is certainly going to set the tone for what Superman movies are gonna look like, and what kind of a general tone that the DCU is going to look like, it also appears that he's giving filmmakers enough freedom to pull from other genres as well, and not just stick to the tone that he would be setting for Superman, necessarily. I think that actually gives me a lot of hope that there's still going to be creative freedom, and within the DCU, within certainly within reason, but creative freedom nonetheless for masters like Mangold and Flanagan to do their thing. I don't know if those movies will be R-rated movies, but you can do a lot more these days with PG-13 than you used to be able to do. Too. And so you can still do a good horror movie with PG-13, as the rating. If you don't make it particularly gory, you can still do a lot of horror. I mean, people need to go, for people who are worried about the possibility of going, no, Swamp Thing must be R-rated or Clayface must be R-rated. Do me a favor and go watch Insidious if you like horror movies, because James Wan made a terrifying PG-13 horror movie. Now, that is James Wan, who is royalty in my opinion. I love James Wan, and but I'm just saying that to say that Insidious is a great example that you can do a very good horror movie without having to go hard R necessarily. And so for me, I'm pretty high on what's being talked about and offered at this point. I wouldn't say that I have any glaring concerns yet. If they come up, I'll obviously share them. But for me, I don't have any glaring concerns about what's been announced. And Gunn's a really well respected filmmaker, and he's gonna continue to easily nab top talent for directors. I mean, look at the directors that he's already tapped, and they all of them have this in common. They are all distinct storytellers with their own distinct creative stamp. He's not he's not out hiring just. Well, this guy directed a couple good music videos and a made-for-TV movie. Maybe we should give him a shot at a $200 million comic book.
He's not Lucasfilm. Yeah.
No, he's not Lucas. No, oh my gosh, no. And we don't even have time to get into that because I'd been a massive Lucasfilm defender through thick and thin, even up until like the last year. And then they chose to finally break me in half. And I'm just like, and they have a lot of work to do to fix on that. I will tell folks though, so far Skeleton Crew has just been one of the most delightful Star Wars offerings I've started watching in a very long time. George Lucas would be so, and I'm sure is so proud of that show because it is very Lucasy.
Oh, that's cool. I've been meaning to watch it. Going and
very
catch up.
Lucasy. And so hopefully things are kind of on the way up there, but I don't have any particular concerns, and Gunn is smart enough to know, okay, Star Wars is floundering, the MCU is floundering. Now's my time. Like now's my time. Like it's make or break. I either take advantage of that moment when my two biggest competitors are kind of in the dumpster bin right now, and I make the DCU the premier franchise.
It's true. There's a big opportunity, like right now to do that because, like you said, those two huge IPs that dominated everything are struggling right now.
Yeah.
And it is interesting because, Gunn, for better or for worse, he has creative control and this universe has his full stamp on it, and so it's, like I said, he's going to ride the success or the failure of it. But I can't fault him exactly for what you said, that he is picking top talent, for writing, for directing. I am intrigued by Clayface, definitely. Clayface has always been a favorite Batman villain of mine. Yeah. I love him. And I am happy also that Gunn's version of Batman in the DCU seems like it's going into the fantastical, realm a bit, because we obviously have Clayface, like, I'd love to see Man-Bat, some of these other more crazy villains,
man. Go crazy with some of the other, gallery of villains that we really just don't get to see that much because the approach has been for many, many years, make Batman as grounded as possible.
Exactly. And I've been down for a while of saying, like, that's part of why I loved Batman in Zack Snyder's Justice League so much. It was like, I love seeing him fighting, gods and aliens, and being part of this more fantastical world. So I'm excited for Brave and the Bold. And I think, I know I do kind of wonder as well if we might get some type of surprise Batman cameo and Clayface, possibly. I could see Gunn sneaking something in there to kind of get people excited. We might get an actor reveal, maybe, who knows, in like an after credit scene or something.
Yeah, I think it's necessary because unless they're an Elseworlds kind of villain movie, I mean, I'm cool with like one or two here or there within the main universe storyline, but otherwise you still need to be connecting all them and kind of going, okay, I know you just saw a Clayface movie, but don't worry, him and Batman are going to meet soon.
Exactly. And I think also it's kind of necessary for the DCU Batman because, we have a popular Batman with Reeves and we're selling another Batman, at the same time to the audiences. And I think, like you said, kind of maybe doing those little teases here and there, might help to get people excited to want to see it. It's like, even in Superman, hey, put some type of little teaser in there, maybe Wayne, a sign for Wayne, or something like that, or have somebody mention Bruce or something like, or like you said, have something show up in Clayface to show people the connection. I think it is smart, but I'm excited for Brave and the Bold and Clayface. And we'll see with the other ones. The only film that I would say gives me pause that I think is a bit of a concern for me is Supergirl. Namely because she's always been a less popular character in kind of the Superman pantheon, I guess you could say. The Supergirl movie failed very badly back in the 80s. Supergirl show was pretty popular. People liked that. But I do get concerned for the universe because, we see, we have Superman and then we have Supergirl coming very soon after. So it's like, if there's some problems with the Superman movie, that's going to spell trouble for Supergirl. Or if Superman is a huge success and Supergirl is not as big of a success just because of maybe, the more obscureness of the character, I could see, I don't know. I just don't want to see problems for the universe that develop for having that quickly, a possible flop that quickly out of the door. But we'll see. So that's my only concern right now, as far as the titles that have been released.
Yeah. And I think your concerns there are really, really valid. I did just recently, or not too long ago, pick up the graphic novel that apparently the Supergirl movie is at least going to be partly based on. And I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I'm really looking forward to checking it out because it's considered one of the best Supergirl comics ever written.
Mm-hmm.
And
is that Woman of Tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we already know that there's going to be heavy inspiration from Woman of Tomorrow, and our friend Stone, for example, just sings the praises of that graphic novel. And so, I love that with Gunn, we've still got a huge comic book movie nerd and a huge comic book nerd in general, that he's not afraid to go back to source material and go, okay, obviously there's going to be a difference between the graphic novel and the movie, but where can we pull significant character and story material from the great stuff that's already there? And then of course you've got to put your own twist on some things. You still have to make it your own. And people need to understand that as well. People shouldn't go into the Supergirl movie, for example, or Brave and the Bold and go, well, that wasn't exactly like the comic book I read. Don't do that. Like, don't set yourself up for failure there. But I do love that a graphic novel that has come so acclaimed critically and then also by fans like Woman of Tomorrow is being used as the kind of the blueprint. I think that's really great, and it doesn't surprise me that Gunn has done that, because he wanted to send a message early on. It's like, hey, this is what we're basing it off of, at least loosely, and people could go, oh dang, that was a good graphic novel. I mean, that's all intentional.
No, absolutely. And, and like you said, I think, people have to realize there's going to be differences, and, and I think that, fans of the characters too have to realize that, these are adaptations, and that's what I always said to people about Superman, with like Cavill and everything. I'm like, this is an adaptation, this isn't necessarily supposed to be the comic book Superman. There can be differences, and it's the same with Supergirl and with Batman, with anything, it's like, Pattinson's Batman is very different than Affleck's Batman, and there's nothing wrong with that,
ways. Yeah.
And so, so there's room for differences with everything. And, and so like I said, I'm interested, like I said, I'm very apprehensive about the DCU as a whole. That being
Right.
said, I'm definitely interested, like I said, Brave and the Bold and Clayface have my attention, and I'm like, okay, I'm definitely going to see these. And, and so, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens and to see, do audiences accept this, and is Gunn going to be successful or not? And and I would say too, because obviously we're both huge Snyder fans, and I would say to any Snyder fans who are listening to this, that that the DCU, that liking elements of the DCU or liking films in it doesn't mean you're betraying like Snyder or the DCEU. You can enjoy both, and we can all
Snyder would want you to.
Oh, of course, yeah.
It's like, come on, like.
Oh yeah, I mean Snyder liked the Batman, with Reeves. I remember he said he really enjoyed that, and so it's like, yeah, you can like both. We can all be united in our hatred of Warner Brothers still, It's like,
and we will be.
Yes, and we will be, and also too, I'd say this. Keep smashing the hashtags of Restore the Snyderverse, because you know what, by keeping the interest alive in that, you never know if Gunn's DCU is successful. You never know what's going to come down the road. It's like there's a lot of multiverse stories out there. There's a lot of stuff that you could see these characters easily pop up in stories, down the road. And so, showing you still have interest in that universe is never harmful. Even if a new universe is there, because I mean, we never thought we'd see Andrew Garfield again as Spider-Man, and look at what we got with No Way Home. So
yeah, and don't be surprised if we see him again.
Exactly.
And again.
What did Deadpool say to till he's 90?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Hugh Jackman will play Wolverine until he's 90. So, but yeah. So I mean, yeah. Plenty to worry about, lots of unknowns, which is the main reason why there's plenty to worry about. But at least, I think that they've got somebody at the helm that knows what he's doing, and is going to give his best shot, at it. And that's really kind of all we can. That's really all we can ask for, at this point. And, who knows, there may end up being a time where Snyder gets to come back into the fold too. I mean, one thing that needs to be understood is, like, Zack Snyder and James Gunn are in fact friends. And so there's no reason to pit them against each other either. I mean, Zack Snyder's directorial debut, Dawn of the Dead, was written by James Gunn.
Absolutely.
I mean, they've already collaborated together, and it was many years ago, but they already have. And so my opinion is that if you want Zack Snyder back in DC, the best shot is for the DCU with Gunn to be successful, and any bridges that have potentially been burned one way or the other can be rebuilt, and he can come back, because it's pretty obvious with projects like Swamp Thing and Clayface, again, for example, that there absolutely would be a place in the DCU for somebody like Zack Snyder.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There's tons of movies that he could direct. I mean, like, I think just off the top, like a Deathstroke film or something like that. There's so much that he could do. And, I think we've seen a little bit too of some repairing starting to happen, just with him being involved with the 300 TV series, with Warner Brothers. So there's definitely some work. And like you said, a DC that is thriving and is successful, has more opportunities than a dead one, for sure. And and like you said, there's always opportunities for stuff. There's always possibilities, and yeah, I'm definitely curious to see where it all goes. And I think, whether you love or hate Gunn, with this, whatever side of the fence you're on, I think that you can at least appreciate that a creative is in charge, of DC versus, a corporate committee, because we've seen what a corporate committee led universe looks like over at Sony, and it is not good.
Oh, it's so terrible, and all the bad things that happened during the Snyder era were the result of that as well. It's I mean, Batman versus Superman, the PG-13 version of it made nearly $1 billion, and the suits at WB were still wringing their hands and wanting to make an about face already, that early on. And then that's of course what led to, two versions of Justice League, which, we don't have time to get into, but we saw how that went, too. The Joss Whedon version of Justice League was roundly rejected for the most part, and that created the need for Zack Snyder's Justice League, and it was not only acclaimed by fans, and even a lot of fans who weren't that high on Snyder's previous work in the DCU really liked Justice League. And so yeah, I think that there is still a place for him, and I hope there is, and God knows that we have to get him out of Netflix. So, like I love that they're giving him so much creative control. I know he's having the time of his life, with that, and so more power to him. But Zack Snyder belongs on the big screen.
Absolutely agree. I would like to see him out of Netflix and properly on the big screen with projects. Yeah, so definitely let like I said, let's get him back, to where, like I said, he can maybe be doing some of these edgier DC properties, which would be great. That being said, I am very curious about his LAPD thriller that's going to be at Netflix, but like you said, if it could be on the big screen, please, would be way better.
No, yeah, I mean it absolutely. I mean, just without a doubt. I mean, I mean, there are some of these filmmakers that are being that are kind of, in my opinion now, essentially trapped by streaming services that they belong on the big screen. It's, Zack Snyder does, God in heaven, Martin Scorsese does, Ryan Johnson belongs on the big screen, and so that is that needs to be seen. I mean, so many filmmakers can just thrive on streaming and do just fine, but these filmmakers that have the more auteur bent really don't deserve it. They don't deserve it.
No, I mean, it's true, because you think back, it's like, what if Oliver Stone would have been like trapped on like the HBO channel making HBO movies for his career? They would have been great, but it's like he wouldn't have gotten the notoriety that he has now, without being on the big screen.
No, I mean, David Fincher should not be on Netflix.
Yeah.
Okay, Fincher, he should not be on Netflix. It's, oh man, just, it makes me so angry, actually, in a way, to see these filmmakers just, they love the money and creative control, and so they're taking it, but get them back on the big screen. And so the DCU being successful under Gunn is extremely necessary for that, for that reason alone. So we'll see if we get a little bit of a teaser before the end of the year, but if not, I'm sure we'll see it shortly thereafter as they ramp up to the to the release date. And you alluded to it earlier. Gunn likes to drop little hints there, and sometimes they're giant rabbit holes, and then sometimes they actually amount to something. And so, I mean, sometimes it's misdirection. It really is intentional misdirection.
It's absolutely true. And, one thing that I think a lot of people aren't necessarily thinking about, that think like, oh, why would Gunn miss this opportunity to have, the trailer in front of, these really big, films, and something a lot of people might not have considered is that, the film might be moving possibly, it might not be staying in July, with all those other films, that they might be bumping it forward a month or two, to August or September, which might delay, a trailer release possibly, who knows? So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I think all of your points were great. And I think we had a great conversation about, about this subject. And I think it's definitely a hot button topic issue, I think, with whether you're a Gunn fan or a Snyder fan. So hopefully there was enough common ground for people of both fandoms to have enjoyed this episode, I hope.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the number one message is just calm down. Just calm down. Just calm
Taylor
down.
Swift would say.
Yeah, as our girl Taylor Swift would say, you need to calm down. Wait and see, be mature, wait and see. And guess what? If you still hate it, after you see it, you are fully entitled to that. But you really do, in my opinion, you want the DCU to be successful, regardless of what has occurred. Because sometimes I'll be sitting down and I'll be going, oh man, Affleck's Batman Deathstroke movie, ugh, I want it. Justice League 2 and 3, I want it. We aren't getting those. And that'll always annoy the crap out of me. But if you want the DC universe to still be successful, this is the path that is before us. Right now. And again, if you end up hating Superman and Batman Brave and the Bold and others, your prerogative, but let's just wait and see beforehand. Let's just wait and see.
Absolutely. I would echo that message and just say, it's like, love what you love. If you're a Batman fan, go see The Brave and the Bold. If you're a Superman fan, check out Superman, when it comes out. And then, like Josh said, if you hate it, let everybody know that you hate it. It's like that's your prerogative, and that's what you can do. I certainly tell people when I don't like a film,
No.
I know that's shocking, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think definitely, everybody, on both sides needs to calm down a bit and just realize, the way the business world, unfortunately, and everything. And if you're a DC fan, you have a path to go down. You can either watch everything and accept it or not, and that's up to you, So I'm definitely going to be taking a wait and see approach. I'm going to watch trailers. I'm going to decide after that and see. And, and like I said, I might end up loving the DCU. I might end up hating it. Who knows? But I promised from the beginning when Gunn took over that I was going to give him a fair shake, and so I am going to give him that fair shake and see, see what he does. So,
well, and dude, go watch if you watch one MCU movie that you haven't seen, go watch Guardians 3, because without giving too much away, if you don't think that Gunn can't go dark, just wait until you watch Guardians 3. oh my gosh, he goes there, man. It's shocking
Mhm.
to an extent.
Mhm.
Some of the like, again, you just have to see it.
Mhm.
But he does. He goes dark, man. And it's kind of mind blowing.
Mhm.
Frankly. So
Mhm. Well, that's good to know. I'll check it out definitely and see. And so you all, everyone who's listening, you heard that too. So check out Guardians 3 and see what you guys think. Because I'm definitely I trust Josh's opinion on that. And so it does make me feel a little bit better. Yes, he can go a little bit dark. He can definitely go serious. So it's gonna be interesting, and you know what? Who knows? Josh, if we end up really liking the direction the universe is going, we might be doing a DCU and me podcast. So who knows? But man, thank you for
sure.
jumping in and joining today. I think we hit a lot of really good points and had some good discussion on this topic.
Yeah, no problem. I really appreciate the invite. It was a fun discussion, and I look forward to you, me, and Curry very soon doing Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition, and I'm sure your listeners will like to hear that. It's been a long time coming. We've had multiple conflicts as far as scheduling is concerned, but it is coming soon. And I tell you what, the three of us cannot wait to talk about BVS.
Oh,
We cannot.
I can say that we are all very, very excited. We all have
Yeah.
notes of what
Oh,
we want
yeah.
to say,
Yeah.
and it's like it's gonna be a great episode. So yeah, it's and after that too, we are going to be getting episodes out more frequently, than we have, before. So you guys won't have to worry about that, and it's going to be great. And we might too, just I'm not going to drop any names or anything like that, but over the course of the podcast, we might have some special guests, pop in, that you guys will be interested to hear more from about their experiences with the DCEU. So definitely keep your eye out on that podcast. And definitely share it and everything, because there's cool stuff coming.
Yeah, and definitely y'all go, if you haven't listened to it, go listen to the Man of Steel episode. That was a lot of fun to do with the three of us. And Jay, Olivia, if you are out there and you are listening, we'd love to have you on.
Absolutely. We would love to have you on.
We would absolutely love to have you on. And if you were asked questions that you cannot answer about Affleck's Batman movie, we understand.
we do understand,
but you maybe ask them anyway.
we will ask anyway. We will understand if there is no answers, and then we will rephrase the next question to try and get the answer.
Right.
So,
That's right. So, all right, man.
All right, man. Well, yeah, thanks again. And like I said, everyone keep your eyes on Under the Lens podcast and the DCEU and Me podcast. There's cool stuff coming.